Allison and I have been, and Colin and the whole Woodhall team have been working to make sure that Seven Drafts is out in the world coming up in September. And please, if you are holding a copy of Seven Drafts from your box, I'd love to, yeah, hold it up. Let me get a screenshot of this because this was one of the elements that we were really excited about. It allowed us to publish, a special limited edition.
These gifts.
Yes, with a band across the cover that will memorialize our first ever Woodhall Press Writers Conference. And we're so glad that all of you were able to participate and support this initiative with our company. And we're forever grateful for Allison's participation as well. She's done so much with the book and the workshop and the keynote. I had the chance to sit in on her workshop, and she calls herself the unkind editor, and she's definitely direct, cuts right to the chase. But you could see the flywheel spinning inside her mind as she's speaking and like slowing it down for the rest of us while the gears are just whirring in there. I heard her mention to someone, that, okay, so this paragraph, let's just cut it. Just take the whole first paragraph out. But it improved the work. It was very clear to me and to everyone in the workshop that, she's here for the work and she's on the side of the author. And that really comes through in her personal delivery, in her, dedication to perfection, and in every page of this book. So I'm proud to announce Allison Williams. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And you'll notice we've specifically used a very large font for your advanced review copies. So A, you won't need your reading glasses. And B, if a burglar breaks into your house, you can use that book for self-defense. The final is going to be a tiny little bit smaller there. Can somebody go ahead and either make me a host or allow screen sharing? And I'm going to show a couple of slides. I have a talk for you guys that will take about 20 minutes, and then we'll take some questions. And it's called How to Be a Real Writer. And so I hope that's going to give us all some ideas about how that happens. So are we all looking at a blue slide? How to be a real writer. Awesome. So I thought a lot about this question, and I thought, as we talk about what makes a real writer, this is me. I have my own hashtag. It's firehose.me, which Brian Watson came up with because listening to me is like getting information from a fire hose. And I normally live in Dubai, which is way over on the other side of the world. And the first myth that I want to talk about with being a real writer is that the money myth. There's this idea that you're not a real writer until you get paid for it. And the problem with getting paid to write is it is not usually getting paid to write. It's usually getting paid to have already written. And most of the work that we do towards getting published is functionally unpaid work, which can be really problematic for those of us with kids and spouses and, jobs that we'd like to accomplish. I took a look at my year so far of full-time quote unquote writing, and I've really kind of worked my ass off this year. I did a big pivot to teaching a lot on Zoom. And because of that, I was able to have my first six-figure year. And that made me very happy because I do like money and I like the work I do to make money. And the income came about 30-30-30 from editing, from hosting retreats, and from, what is this other one? And from teaching. I've taught a lot of webinars this year. However, my time actually breaks down to like, there's another 20% on stuff that generates royalties, which is, writing books, the writing books part of things. And there's another 20% of other, which is all the shit I do for free. And it's really helpful as a writer to have a goal that is not make money, because if you want to do quality work that you love, money may be a secondary benefit, but it is unlikely to be the main thing that you receive. So I have a bunch of stuff that I get paid to do. I teach webinars. They take about 18 to 24 hours per 1 hour webinar. It takes time to make slides. It takes time to answer all the follow-up questions. I host retreats. If it's an online retreat, it takes about 80 to 100 hours of my time in prep, in doing it, and in follow-up. If I host a travel retreat, there's also a couple of days of travel on either side of that. If I'm hosting a virtual intensive, which is like what we're doing today, except over 4 or 5 days in a row, they take about 60 to 90 hours of my time. And I also write plays, which I'm going to talk a little bit about more. And I have written plays, but currently my playwriting time is 0, and yet I still get paid for it, which I will talk about in a minute. Now, here's all the stuff that I generally do for free. I spend about 2 hours a week. Whoopsie, that was the back button. There we go. I spend about 2 hours a week blogging for Brevity, and that works for me in a couple of ways. It gets my name out there. A lot of you guys met me first because I wrote a blog for Brevity and you liked it. It keeps me writing because it means that there's twice a week where either I have to get a guest post in, and please do submit guest posts if you have ideas. I'd love to see them. Or I have to write a post myself. And most of my Brevity blog posts are written in about the hour before I post them because they follow a specific formula and I can write them and turn them out. I host the Writer's Bridge, which is a bi-weekly Zoom chat where we talk to authors about platform. Authors get a chance to network. It's always free. My friend Ashley and I co-host it, and that takes me about 2 hours a week of prep time and doing it. I'm a binge writer, so when I write novels, I tend to check into a hotel and write for a week. And we're going to talk a little bit more about binge writing versus gym writing. When we are not in the middle of a pandemic, I host the Dubai Literary Salon once a month. I just did Hippocamp, which is another writing conference that I was physically present at that took a whole weekend. I spend an hour or two a day on social media. And since 2016, I've spent about 300 hours writing 7 drafts. And I probably haven't logged all of my actual time on writing 7 drafts because a lot of the material in the book started as a blog for Brevity. And so that's one reason to do this free stuff, is that writing for free helps me generate material that I am later going to sell. It lets me practice what I'm going to sell. The other reason is before I was a full-time writer, I was a full-time circus performer. And a lot of what I did was street performing. And a lot of the deal with street performing is that you give the show away for free and then you get to ask for money afterwards. So I did a lot of aerial stuff, sometimes barefoot in the snow. I did a lot of fire stuff, sometimes setting my face on fire and passing fire from my tongue to my friend's tongue. And we gave the show away for free the vast majority of the time. Sometimes we did festivals where we were paid to be there. Sometimes we did theatrical shows. But most of the time, what we were doing was performing on the street, hooking the audience by, waving a fire torch or look, there's a big trapeze rig up there, come stop and watch us. But fundamentally, the tricks are an excuse to spend time with the performers. And at the end of the show, we say, hey, thank you. It's been a show. We hope you would like to give us some money. And as a street performer, everybody gets to see the show. And then the people can afford to pay for the show, subsidize the people who cannot afford to pay for the show. But everybody got to see the show. And it's my job to motivate the ones who can afford it to want to give that little bit extra that will compensate for the people who can't. And this works for me as well as a writer. I want to give my stuff away. Some of the time you have a great big giant crowd. This is Skopje, Macedonia. That's me in the air. The festival was sponsored by Meat. And every single one of these people gave me the equivalent of, an expensive cup of coffee. They gave it in Macedonian dinars, so it wasn't actually worth anything when we counted up. But according to their income, they all gave us money. On the other hand, we also did a show on the Albanian side of the bridge. And there's bad history in that whole ex-Yugoslavian area, and Albania now no longer a closed communist country. And as you can see, it's not the greatest crowd we ever had. There's some people, they're not entirely sure why we're there. And we learned a chunk of the show in Albanian to be able to do, and they really liked it because the point was not, let us go make as much money as we can. The point was, let's get the show to people who need to see the show, to people who don't get entertainment in their neighborhood. And that's the same way that I feel about writing. I want to give my stuff away until it's time to ask to be paid. Because giving stuff away is what people learn, is how people learn, oh, hey, this is quality work and I would like some more of it. If you're a freelance writer, then by all means, you should be getting paid for your work. If you are a full-time freelancer, in fact, you should probably give yourself a raise, because the easiest way to make more money as a freelancer is to ask for it, to raise your rate. But at the same time, we also need to establish ourselves. And if you are not a full-time freelance writer, if that is not your career path, your priority is not to make money. Your priority is to be seen, to make connections with the readers who need your work, the readers who need to know about what happens when you have an otherworldly experience with someone who may be a demigod, with the readers who need to know what happens when your mother irrevocably severs your family and you still have to care for your daughter. There are other people who need those stories, and by letting them know for free that you tell those stories, they are more likely to be able to buy your work when the time comes. Not all of us are meant to be really fancy and expensive all the time. There is room for IKEA. Sometimes people just need a couch that goes together that they can get for cheap. And sometimes people need fancy architecture. And the goal is to spread your words out there enough that when it's time for you to finally ask to be paid, people go, oh yeah, that works really good. I really want to pay that person because I know how good their work is. And even then, in the literary community, the people who can't afford to pay you will then help you by evangelizing for your work and becoming ambassadors for your work. We'd like to make money. We'd like to get what we're worth. But realistically, most of our time as writers is going to be connecting with readers rather than generating dollars. So it's worth it to decide, is that something that you love doing? If you are paid, raise your price. Raise your hourly rate, especially if you haven't given yourself a raise in a while. If you're an editor, if you're a freelance writer, ask yourself when the last time you raised your price was, and raise your price. The writing all the time myth. I used to believe that a real writer woke up in the morning and stretched themselves out and went over to their typewriter and typey really frantically for about 2 hours. And then they stopped and retired to the lounging couch for the rest of the day, simply too faint to go on. You know, and Edith Wharton's secretary picked up all her sheets of paper on the floor and typed them up. Most people I know don't write every day. Either they don't have time because they have families or they have jobs, or they don't have the motivation to do it, which is one of the challenges that I have. But also, some people are binge writers. So one of the things I really love watching is Formula One. And I'm going to take a moment here and just show you this lovely pit stop with these fabulous pit stop guys who are apparently just standing around, just kind of hanging out. Until it's time to change all 4 tires in under 2 seconds. For me, that is very much how writing works. I spend a lot of time waiting. I spend a lot of time researching. I spend a lot of time walking the entire Upper West Side so that I know what the neighborhood is of the book that I'm writing now. And the thing that we often forget is the tortoise and the hare both finished the race. And fortunately, in publishing, it doesn't actually matter which one of us gets there first. What matters is that we got there at all. And so think about, are you a project-based writer? So my background's in theater. I'm used to, it happens outside your regular life. There's a scheduled time for rehearsals. It's not actually part of your regular day. You might spend 6 to 12 months planning a production or plotting out your novel or doing the research for your memoir. There's usually like a 2-week pre-production period where you get everything together and you decide, okay, how exactly is this all going to work? Then if you're putting up a play, you rehearse really hard for 6 weeks. If I'm writing a book, I check myself into a hotel for a week, maybe 2 weeks. You do 10 out of 12 hours, especially the last week, and then boom, it's done. There is a hard, non-negotiable deadline and everything must be done by the time that comes. You might make minor adjustments after, but it's mostly, okay, it's got to be done. And very often I enlist support staff. I will, if I'm trying to meet a deadline, I will have a friend who I send each chapter to as I get it finished, and they give me that immediate feedback because I am a sucker for feedback. It really helps me keep going when I have that kind of outside influence. There's also people, though, who are lifestyle writers. It's more like going to the gym. It changes their regular life. Their regular life works around writing. Their regular life accommodates writing. Sometimes they work in academia where they have a private office they can go to if they're not a lowly adjunct. They might plan to do daily work forever. Sometimes it'll be in the final presentation. Sometimes it won't be. They'll make ongoing adjustments. They're constantly working to improve their craft on an ongoing basis rather than let me get better for this particular one. And then they'll have some special peaks or some goals where they have more intense work. Like, okay, I'd really like to finish this manuscript. So I'm going to write 3 hours a day for a while instead of 1 hour a day. They tend to more have consultation staff. Maybe they check in with an editor after each draft. Maybe they swap with a beta reader or with a friend. Both of these are great ways to work, but you don't have to write every day to be a real writer. It's okay if you've got 1 weekend a month. It's okay if you've got 2 weeks a year. It's okay if you write an hour a day. Whatever way gets the work done is the way that works for you. Project writers like retreats. They like to have one focus at a time. Lifestyle readers very often have some kind of a regular schedule. Very often they're working on multiple projects. So you might recognize yourself in one of these. And sometimes too, lifestyle writers will either have some kind of writing adjacent job like copywriting or freelancing or something, or they have a job that doesn't take up their entire brain power. The feeling like you've arrived myth. Fame does not equal success, and success does not equal fame. One of them very often goes without the other. I teach a lot of high school theater. And whenever I work with high school theater, I always have parents who come up to me and say, oh, my kid really wants to be in acting, but I hear nobody actually makes a living at that. Nobody's going to be a movie star. They want to move out to LA. And the thing is, there are lots of theater jobs that are not star on television or star in the movies. There are lots of successful working actors whose job is to show up every day and do their work. My friend Dion, you may recognize him from The Wire. You may know his voice because he narrates the first 48. He's also become an incredibly popular audiobook guy. And what he's really known for now is he narrates audiobooks. He's become Dave Eggers' go-to guy for narrating audiobooks. He did the James Patterson, Bill Clinton compilation. That was his voice on the audiobook as well. So he has found this niche where he is able to constantly work and make money and make a living without ever achieving the level of visible success that most people think of when they think of successful actor. And so this works for us in writing as well, that the stuff we do that keeps us going may not be the stuff that makes us money. The stuff that makes us money may not be the stuff that makes us famous. And the stuff that makes us famous is very often stuff that doesn't actually make a ton of money. The validation myth. There is no permission fairy. There is no one who is going to suddenly appear to you in a cloud of glitter and bop you with a wand and go, now you may call yourself a writer. You get to call yourself a writer as long as you're writing. You get to be a writer as long as you're writing. For those of you who are parents, you're still a parent when they move out, right? So you're still a writer even when you are not actively typing at this moment. You are still a writer even before you have sold a book in a traditional publishing deal. You are still a writer even before anyone has bought your book. I have a book. It sells. It sells constantly in small doses. It will probably sell constantly in small doses for a good long time. It doesn't make me feel like a real writer because it's a craft book. So I feel like, oh, well, does that make me a real writer? What counts? What am I allowed to count? I have a play script that has never sold even one copy. I love this play. I'm really proud of it. But the high school theater market is not ready for a young man coming out of the closet play, no matter how funny I make it. It has never sold a copy. Maybe one day it will. On the other hand, I have a ton of high school plays that have sold lots of copies. I am one of the most produced playwrights in America. You've never heard of me. And it's because the high school theater market is its very own special beast that does thousands of productions every year. And if you can write a play that is exactly 30 minutes long, so it fits in a competition slot, it has more parts for girls than boys because there are more girls than boys in drama class. It has lots of little parts so that everybody can have a couple of lines on stage, and there's no cussing, no drinking, no swearing, no sex, unless it's specifically a play about those issues. And it's not lame and boring. If you can write to that formula and write something that is snappy and clever and fun, this market can make you a lot of money. And dollar for dollar, the place that I have made the most money and perhaps had the most success as a writer is playwriting. Because once you write a play, people pay you to produce it forever, and you never have to do any more work about that. If you've got a good publisher, they're getting your scripts out there into the world. It's considerably easier than most of my friends with traditional book deals. And when I go to high school theater conferences, little children scream my name and throw donuts at me because it's a joke in one of the plays. And yet it still doesn't feel real. It still doesn't feel like it counts because it's not something the people who I see on a regular daily basis can understand and wrap their heads around. So it's not the money, it's not the validation. You really do have to punch your own ticket. You really do have to decide, okay, now I feel successful. You have my book in your hands, and part of me still feels fraudulent because it's not a novel, because it's telling you how to write books, and I don't have a novel out. You know, how dare I do that? And yet there's another part of me that knows I'm really fucking good at telling people how to write books. And teaching and doing are two different skills. They complement each other, but they are not the same skill. I can teach a circus performer how to go up in the air and come down in a triple flip. I can't do it myself, but I can get somebody else to do it, get them to do it correctly, and get them to be brave enough to do it. What helps me the most is the code. And it might help you to feel like a real writer, to think about what you believe about your art. I am not an especially religious person, but I hold two sacred laws. One, that it is a mortal sin to lie on the page. I can choose not to write something. I can choose to tell a different side of the story, but I can only tell the truth. In fiction, this means honestly doing the work to make my characters' choices and actions truthful within their world. In memoir, this means writing the bits that make me look bad. I'm willing to be shitty and selfish and mean on the page because leaving those things out would be lying. The second thing I believe is that we who are lucky enough to have the desire, the ability, and the time to write must speak to and for the people who don't or can't. We owe our very best storytelling to those who took the same journey but can't share it in words, or to those who are unable to go on the journey at all, but have always wanted to. And the price of artistic ability is to use it as fully and as faithfully as we can. And as long as I keep to those, then I'm a real writer. So do your work. The right way to do the work is the way that is getting the work done. I will send you these slides later, should you so desire. There's some clickable links about my stuff. And I'd love to take any questions.
I'll jump in and encourage folks. You know, if you got it, you know, you can. Thank you, Allison. That was great. And hashtag firehose me. No, but really, lots of potent truth in there. Preach, sister.
Thanks.
And, do we have any questions?
Stephanie made a great comment in the chat. I hear what you're saying about doing work for free, but as a full-time freelancer, I tell people who try to sell me on exposure, you can die of exposure. Absolutely. And I think there's definitely a difference between being a freelancer and your job is to sell your work for money, in which case you should get as much money for it as you possibly can, versus being a person focused on writing literary work or writing book length work, in which case it's more important to get seen and to get connected. And it is a hard line to walk. It's a very, very hard line to walk. And the way I walk it is I try to give away as much as I can afford to give away. I try to spread my work to as many people as I can, you know, because the person who can take a $25 webinar today might be the person who in 5 years can pay me $3,000 to go on a retreat, you know, and now they know my work. So I try to spread the wealth as much as I can. Jeremy, you got a question?
You think Lewis Hamilton's going to win the championship this year?
You know, I'm so scared he's not going to, but I think they're trying to prep the car for next year. And I think this just might have to be a growing year. But George Russell is really coming up and I'm really proud of him.
George Russell's overrated, sorry.
Later on, we'll have to talk about the race Lewis missed for COVID. So,
yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Can't believe they screwed up the tires like that.
Yeah.
Stephanie, fill us with your wisdom.
Well, whatever it is, but I want to follow up on that comment because I do a lot of work for free or for low amounts. Partly for love, I work with a citizen journalism program because I want to help people out with that. But you can get addicted to writing. You know that. Everyone here knows that. And I've written a lot of historical books about Boston. I'm really addicted that. I want to do it so much that I think I've undersold myself because I've done these for very little money. And I want to have that ability to walk away from a project that doesn't fairly compensate me for what I'm doing. The trouble is, like so many people, a lot of particularly women, I don't know what my fair compensation level is. So I fight my own addiction. Oh, I really want to do this. I really want to do this book. But you aren't paying me any money. So how do you resolve that?
I take the amount of money I want to make in a year and I divide it by the number of hours I would like to work.
Okay.
And I know that's like kind of a weird backwards way to go about it. I also try really hard to find out what other people are charging. I mean, you guys can see what I charge. It's on my website where you can sign up for a meeting. It's $185 an hour. You know, I don't average out to that much because there's prep time and there's, you know, research time and everything. Colin makes a great point in the chat, opportunity cost. How much could you make doing something else? You know, that's what let me first hire a housekeeper years and years and years ago, because if I can hire this lovely woman who has her own business and wants to come clean my house and pay her $60 an hour, I can make $100 an hour while she's doing that. So it actually costs me money to clean my house instead of paying somebody else to do it. Stephanie, I am also happy to talk hard numbers with you if you want to stick around a little bit afterwards. So yeah, Sarah, what's your question?
Hi. I mean, honestly, with your presentation, like, you know, it answered actually a lot of questions that I've asked both myself and other people throughout the course of this conference. So I was like, oh, what a nice little bow to tie it off with. But one thing that I, especially the idea that you don't have, as a theater person, it resonated with me that you don't have to you know, cry over your laptop for 24 hours a day and call that the grind. And I've earned my keep as a writer. But I was curious about your drafts. When do you think that your drafts have earned their keep? I'm a poet and also hope to write a memoir. But there are so many poems that do you have anything that you feel that you've outgrown, like that you have a draft that you were like waiting to use for years, or you know, I mean, I feel that way about my journals. Before I finished a young adult novel that I'm shopping now, and before I finished 7 drafts, I wrote a memoir, and the memoir agented, and it went out to be sold, and nobody bought it. Either they liked the voice and hated the story, or they hated the story and, or they hated the voice and liked or vice versa. You know what I'm getting at. And
I thought, okay, well, I don't know what's wrong. You know, maybe I need to fix this. And then about a year later, I was at a conference where they did that thing where they read the first page and the agents gong you where they would stop reading. And they got through my whole first page. And I thought, well, that's really cool. Maybe I should read a little chunk of this memoir at the student reading tonight. You know, maybe I can kind of build on this momentum. And I flipped through my book and I was like, boring, pornography, boring, boring, porn. There's no way I'm reading that. Boring, boring, porn, boring. And I was like, oh, the book's not good enough. That's why it didn't sell. And I realized that I had written it before I had been medicated for depression. And the memoir read like it was written by someone who was unmedicated and depressed. And I've spent a long ass time on that book. It probably took me 10 years to put the whole thing together. It started as a blog. And I learned to write a book, and I learned I could write a book, but I will never publish that book because it is no longer as good as I can write. And I think it's a really good sign when you have outgrown something because it shows how much you have grown as a writer since you wrote it. When you look at it and you feel that vague sense of distaste, like, I don't know if I really want to spend my time on this, you're better than that now. And dancers take hundreds of classes before they perform. Artists crumple up and throw away thousands of sketches that never go anywhere, that never get refined into a painting. We also have drafts that are not meant to ever see the light of day. I hope that answers your question. Gabby, what's your question?
So I've written a memoir and also a novel, but both completed both of those and writing other stuff now, which I've sent to at least 3 editors per book. And the last one for the novel was a developmental editor who actually came back and said, this is lovely. It was a very expensive way to get a this is lovely. But my question to you is, how do I know that an editor is going to get my book? And so rather than paying someone who's just going to say, this is lovely, and she's a very highly respected developmental editor. How do I know how to choose an editor that's worth the money and will do the job? Because
that is a great question. And yeah, I have heard of like editing prices seem to not really be tethered at all to the level of good someone is. I know people who charge 5 times what I charge. Some of them are as good as me. Some of them aren't. I know people who charge half as much as I charge. Some of them are as good. Some of them aren't. Whenever you are working with an editor, always, always, always get a sample edit. Some editors do it for free. Some editors charge. I charge about $100 to edit about 10 pages. You want to see the kind of reactions that they're going to have to your work and whether you feel like they get it and whether you feel like they have something helpful to say. It can feel expensive to like book a $200 meeting with someone on Zoom to talk about your work, but it's much, much better than investing a couple of thousand in a developmental edit that turns out not to be, you know, great and beneficial for you. You'll know that they're the right editor when you get your sample back and the little writer inside you goes, oh man, I thought I could get away with that, but yeah, I kind of know I can't get away with it. I kind of always knew that that needed to be fixed. And now this editor is helping me by giving me some ideas on how. So yeah, get a sample edit. And if you resonate with the sample edit, that's probably the way to go. And also ask your fellow writers for references as well. It can really help to work with somebody who, you know, somebody else recommends. And I'm also happy to give references. I know a bunch of really good editors. Anita, what's your question?
Sorry. First of all, just thank you so much. That was just so much really, really good information. One of the things I just wanted to like circle back with you on, because I had not even thought about it. I actually, I have a degree in theater and English, and I have written one act play and a one-woman show that I performed and got produced. But I also taught English to high school students and even taught a theater class. And never really thought about the market of writing plays for high schools until you said that. And I thought, oh, because that's one of the things people comment on my dialogue. then it's something I've been interested in. Right now, I'm working on a young adult magical realism novel, which I'm really enjoying that process. But I just wanted to hear more about how one might explore or, find out some more information about the high school play.
Yeah, it's a big market. There's only 3 or 4 publishers in the market, but the market itself is very large. My publisher is called Theater Folk. They have a really good mailing list, and they have a really good website where you can read a lot of sample pages of all of their plays. So I highly recommend checking out Theater Folk. It's really worth it to, if you can, when gatherings are happening again and they are safe, to find out when your local thespian festival is. So Thespians is a high school club that's like an international franchise drama club. And they usually have a district event and a state event where the public can come and see the plays as well. You will have to spend the day watching high school students do theater. Yeah. I can guarantee you it will not be as bad as the day I saw middle school students doing a scene from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Oh God.
You'll get a sense of like what they're doing and what they love doing. And I think too, also just looking through the plays on the website, and this is true for whatever you are trying to submit, whatever publication realm you want to break into, go to the publisher's website, like Woodhall's, like Penguin Random House's, and read some of those books. What kind of aesthetic do they have? What kind of stuff are they sharing with the world? What are they interested in sharing with the world? Follow editors on Twitter and see, they're often on Twitter saying, man, I really need a female person of color travel memoir set in Eastern Europe. Has anybody got that? They will put out calls and you can go, okay, that's what they're looking for. But yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out Theater Folk. And Anita, when you feel like you are ready, email me and I will connect you with them. And if you have some questions about writing high school plays specifically, a lot of it is hitting a formula. If you can hit the formula and have the play be good. And also,
and
those
I think
of you who are church.
God, I just love it because I think I taught in Oakland, California, and I just think about the content, that, the plays that were out there, there just wasn't a lot to choose from, so yeah. It's kind of an exciting thought. So thank you very much for the information. Those of you who are
churchgoers, church theater is also a really big market, one that I am not qualified to enter because I don't share any of those denominations. And even if you have no desire to ever write a play in your life, if you take a playwriting class, it will make you a better novelist. And it will make you a better memoirist because playwriting is all about structure. It is all about why is this character in this scene? Why is this person here? What does this person want? And that will really help you. Nina, you're going to be our last question.
Okay, so maybe this is a good last question because it's more just an exclamation point on what you've said, not that you need one, but I think I'm kind of living proof of what you're talking about giving away stuff, because I read your brevity blog and then I attended a $25 hour class during a lunch hour one day. And then I engaged with you to help me with some editing on my book. And now I'm here today, right? So because you gave some stuff away and put yourself out there, I am with you forever in whatever way I can be. And so I think what you're saying really does work. And then on a totally other note, I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice, and I just gave myself a raise because it's been a really long 18 months and my folks have responded really favorably, you're worth it. I'm happy to do that. So give yourself a raise and give things away. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys have been an absolutely amazing audience. Colin points out he still goes to the same drug dealer that gave me my first taste. Yep. First one's free, Colin. And that really is, how we get people in. All of you have beautiful, incredible words and stories to share with the world. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your words, and you owe it to the readers who need your book to reach out and find them, to let them know that you are there and you have a story that lets them know I'm not the only one who feels like this. Thank you all so much for your time. And thank you, Woodhall.